Okay, let's unpack this. We have a truly massive amount of material here, looking at thousands of years of history.
Yeah, it's the story of the land that eventually becomes Germany, right? From the very earliest times up to now.
Exactly. And it's definitely not a simple, straight line, is it?
Oh, not at all. What comes through is this incredibly complex, layered history, lots of fragmentation, lots of regional focus.
Fixed with these intense periods of unity and, well, pretty devastating conflict, too.
Precisely. So I guess our task here, looking at all this research, these notes, it's to pull out the key insights, right?
Yeah, connect the past to the present, try and give you a structured handle on this really rich and sometimes turbulent history.
Get to the core dynamics, the turning points. Because these didn't just shape Germany, they echoed across Europe, even globally.
And there's that constant tension you mentioned, central power versus regional identity. That seems to run through everything.
It really does. It's something to keep in mind as we go through this.
Okay, so where do we start? The ground itself? Geography.
Makes sense. The physical location in Central Europe is absolutely fundamental. You've got, what, 9 borders today?
Yeah, and a huge range in terrain. Flat plains up north, the Alps way down south.
And the rivers, the Rhine, the Danube, the Elbe, they're like historical actors in their own right.
More than just lines on a map. They were the original highways, weren't they?
Totally. Crucial for migration, settlement, trade. You see cities popping up along them.
Like with the Hanseatic League, those big trading cities.
Exactly. Lübeck on the coast, but also Cologne, Bremen, right on those rivers. They dominated trade in the North and Baltic seas for a long time.
And the climate. Temperate. Good for farming.
Yep. Supported agriculture for centuries, the bedrock of the economy. And then what's underground?
Ah, the resources.
Yeah.
Coal, lignite, salt, timber, iron ore.
Destiny-shaping stuff. Those coal deposits in the Ruhr and Saar, they didn't just help industrialization in the 19th century.
They basically were industrialization in many ways.
Right. And even way back, medieval metalworking relied on resources from places like the Hartiso Mountains.
But it wasn't always a harmonious relationship with the land, was it? Deforestation is mentioned way back.
Yeah, even in the medieval period. Apparently, it led to some early forms of managed forestry, interestingly enough.
And then much later, the industrial pollution. The Ruhrgebiet becoming a gray zone.
A huge environmental cost. The land wasn't just a passive backdrop. It was shaped by people, and it shaped them back.
Like needing dikes for river floods, maybe learning from the Dutch.
Exactly. And the landscape reinforced those regional differences too, didn't it? The industrial Rhine-Ruhr versus, say, Alpine Bavaria.
You could almost say the fragmentation of the Holy Roman Empire felt natural, in a way, given the geography.
It definitely mirrored those deep-seated divisions. It's all interwoven, the physical, the political, the social.
And that environmental damage from industry and war.
Mm-hmm.
There's a line from that to modern environmentalism, isn't there?
Absolutely. The Green Party's roots, the Energiewende, you can trace it back to dealing with that legacy.
Okay, let's rewind.
Ooh.
Way back, before states. Prehistoric times.
Deep time, yeah. We're talking Paleolithic, Neanderthals, then the Neolithic Revolution, farming comes in.
The linear pottery, funnel beaker cultures, those names always stick with me.
Yeah. Then Bronze and Iron Ages. This is where you see societies like Urnfield and Hallstatt starting to prefigure later Germanic tribes.
And the Iron Age, interacting with Celts, developing pre-Roman foundations.
Right. The Germanic peoples themselves seem to arrive maybe 3,000 years ago, coming down from Scandinavia and North Germany. Climate change might have pushed them.
And that's when their distinct languages and cultures started forming.
Seems so. And as they expanded, 1st century BC or so, they're bumping into Celts, Slavs, Balts, all sorts of groups.
But no unified Germany yet, just tribal groups, Alemanni, Franks, Saxons.
Exactly. Confederations, warrior aristocracies, governance through assemblies, the thing, chieftains leading them, very decentralized.
And culturally, what do we know?
Well, animistic beliefs tied to nature. The mythology Wotan, Donar, later written down in the Eddas. Oral traditions were huge, loyalty, kinship bonds.
That's the bedrock then, the cultural soil from which states eventually grew. So how did those first states actually start forming?
It really kicks off with interactions with Rome, especially as the Western Empire weakens. The Franks are key here.
Clovis I, uniting tribes, converting to Christianity.
Yeah, that's a major turning point. Sets the stage for the shift from the Merovingians to the Carolingians.
And then Charlemagne looms large.
Colossus is right. He pulls together this huge empire, bits of modern Germany, France, Italy, crowned emperor in 800 CE.
A fusion moment, Roman, Christian, Germanic traditions all blended.
An attempt at it, definitely. A new kind of Western unity, but it didn't hold.
Right. The Treaty of Verdun in 843 splits it up, and the eastern part becomes
The Regnum Francorum Orientalium, basically the precursor to Germany. But power wasn't central. It was with the big regional dukes.
the stem duchies, Saxony, Bavaria, Franconia.
Yeah, Swabia, Lotharingia too. They were the real power bases, challenging any central authority right from the start.
So the election of Henry the Fowler in 919, that's highlighted as significant.
It really is. Duke of Saxony, first non-Frankish king, and crucially, he didn't carve up his domain among his sons like the Franks often did, helped stabilize things.
And his son, Otto Grafy, Otto the Great, he sounds like the really pivotal figure here.
Arguably, yes, for both a German nation idea and the Holy Roman Empire, elected 936, consciously styled himself as Charlemagne's successor.
And he really consolidated power, didn't he? The sources mention defeating the Magyars.
Lechfeld, 955, huge victory. Secured the eastern border, massive prestige boost. He also subjugated Slavic groups, replaced rebellious dukes.
And the church connection, the Ottonian Salian system.
Critical. He asserted control over appointing bishops and abbots, gave them secular power and land, basically turned them into loyal administrators, princes of the empire.
Integrating church and state very deeply, with long-term consequences, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. And then reviving the actual imperial title that came later.
After he intervened in Italy, helped Queen Anne, right?
Yeah.
Then crowned emperor in Rome, 962.
Yes, by Pope John XII. And that act ties German rulers to Italy and the papacy for centuries. This whole idea of the German king protecting Italy and the church.
That's where the Holy Roman Empire name eventually comes from. And later, Nationis Germanicae gets tacked on.
Exactly, suggesting some kind of German connection, however loose. The later Ottos continued this. Otto II called himself Imperator Romanorum, Emperor of the Romans.
Trying to connect directly to that Roman legacy. Byzantine links, too.
Through marriage, yeah. Otto III had this grand vision of reviving the Roman Empire based in Rome, even appointed the first German pope. Didn't really work out.
Henry II then focused more back on Germany itself.
Right, consolidating authority there. And it's worth noting the sources point out powerful women like Adelaide and Theophano played major roles in governing during this time.
And law and administration. Still mostly customary law.
Initially, yeah. Oral tribal traditions. Some Roman influence lingered in old occupied areas. The emperors tried to centralize, codify things, often using church officials because they were literate.
But feudalism was still the main structure. Lord-vassal relationships.
Very much so, reinforcing that local power structure.
So, key figures. Arminius resisting Rome, Clovis and Charlemagne trying broader Frankish unity.
And then Henry the Fowler, and especially Otto the Great, founding this distinct German kingdom, but one built around powerful regions and that church-state link, setting the stage for future struggles.
And those early regional duchies just kept echoing through the centuries, didn't they? That constant challenge of unity.
Definitely. Which brings us nicely to how external forces shaped things. Foreign contact is a huge theme.
Starting with the Romans, obviously. 50 BCE to 400 CE or so.
Yeah. Military campaigns, partial conquest, the Board of the Limes Germanicus, but also trade, cultural exchange. Cities like Trier, Cologne, Mainz still show it.
Then the Huns arrive, pushing west, triggering the migration period.
The Volkerwanderung, yeah. Forces Germanic tribes into new situations, often interacting with the collapsing Roman Empire. Then later, Vikings raiding up north.
Hamburg hit hard, right? And Magyars raiding from the east until Otto stopped them.
Right, 955 at Lechfeld. And the whole eastern frontier involved constant interaction with Slavic peoples, not just conflict, but settlement, trade.
And the gradual German eastward expansion, the Aussiedlung.
Starts in the High Middle Ages, a centuries-long process of settlement and cultural mixing.
And the papacy. Huge influence from outside.
Immense. Spiritually, politically, sometimes cooperation, sometimes major clashes, like the investiture controversy.
That fight over appointing bishops, which weakened the emperor.
Exactly. Strengthened the princes and the pope. And, of course, relations with neighbors, France, Poland, Austria, constantly shifting, shaping borders and politics.
Now, colonialism. Germany wasn't really colonized early on, was it? More resisting or expanding?
Right. Tribes resisted Rome. But German groups did engage in expansion that had colonial features. Think of the Teutonic Knights in Eastern Europe conquering the old Prussians.
And then much later, unified Germany did become a colonial power. Scramble for Africa, Pacific, Asia.
Late 19th, early 20th century. Created new conflicts with Britain, France. Led to brutal crackdowns on resistance. like the Harrow War in 1904.
The sources even link the wider colonial economy, including the slave trade, to wealth accumulation in Central Europe before industrialization.
It's a point made, yeah, showing those global economic connections, even indirectly.
And resistance runs deep, too. Arminius against Rome, Saxons against Charlemagne.
Fierce resistance there. And maybe the most persistent resistance was internal, the princes pushing back against emperors trying to centralize. That defined the HRE.
And when foreign powers did dominate, even briefly, it left a mark.
For sure. Roman law, language, religion, cities. The idea of Rome influenced the HRE concept. Frankish rule brought some unification, a new administration.
But Napoleon, that seems like the most disruptive intervention.
Hugely transformative. He dissolves the Holy Roman Empire in 1806. It was already weak, but he finished it. Redrew maps, brought legal reforms.
The Napoleonic Code.
In some areas, yeah. And paradoxically, by being the foreign oppressor, he ignited German nationalism as a reaction against him. Cleared away old structures, unintentionally paving the way for unification later.
Wow. So that dramatic end leads into this long, twisting road of political evolution.
It's quite a ride, isn't it? Feudal HRE, Bismarck's nationalism, fragile Weimar democracy, the horror of the Third Reich, division, then reunification.
So many sharp turns. That HRE fragmentation really accelerates later on, 13th, 15th centuries.
Yeah, central power just keeps weakening. Princes gain more autonomy. Documents like the Statutum in Favorum Principum in 1232 basically confirm they're lords of their own lands.
Cementing that particularism, the focus on state power.
Exactly. Emperors had to rely more on their personal family lands, their Hausmacht.
Then boom, the Reformation. 1517, Luther. Religious split becomes political.
Absolutely. The Peace of Augsburg, 1555, with Cuius Regio, Ace Religio, the ruler, decides the religion didn't unify. It entrenched the divisions, allowed states to grab more power.
And those tensions eventually explode into the 30 Years' War.
1618 to 1648, starts locally, spirals into this massive European conflict fought mostly on German land. Devastating.
The sources mention huge population losses, maybe a third to a half in some areas.
Horrific numbers. Fighting, famine, disease, and the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. It fundamentally reshaped the HRE.
Granting massive autonomy to hundreds of states, crippling the emperor's power.
Pretty much. Cemented the Protestant-Catholic split, territories lost, the Netherlands formally leaves. It's seen as the HRE becoming just a shell, the beginning of all the little Germanys.
And out of that mess rises Prussia, 17th, 18th centuries.
The defining story. The Hohenzollern rulers centralizing administration, building this incredibly disciplined army, some religious toleration, they became a major power.
Frederick the Great being key.
Absolutely. This leads to that German dualism, the big rivalry, Prussia versus Austria, became really clear in wars like the 7 Years' War.
Then Napoleon sweeps away the HRE. After him, the German Confederation in 1815. Still loose, Austria dominant.
Right. Still far from unified. Then you get the 1848 revolutions, liberals, nationalists trying for unity and a constitution from below.
The Frankfurt Parliament drafted a constitution, offered the crown to Prussia, but it failed.
Yeah, ultimately failed. Reaction set in, so unification came later, from above.
Enter Bismarck. Prussia, 1862. Realpolitik.
Pragmatic power politics. He expanded the army, even against Parliament's wishes, then used it. Calculated wars.
Denmark 64, Austria 66, France 70-71. Victory over France, the final step.
The capstone, yeah. Leads to proclaiming the German Empire at Versailles in 1871. Prussian king as emperor. Finally resolved the German question, Prussia on top.
And this empire. Federal monarchy, some democracy, but powerful elites.
Had the elected Reichstag, yes. But the chancellor answered to the emperor. Prussia had huge influence via the Bundesrat. Rapid industrialization happened then.
And Bismarck's social laws. Healthcare, pensions. Trying to undercut socialism.
Partly, yeah. But then under Kaiser Wilhelm II, it shifts to aggressive imperialism, Weltpolitik. Building up the navy, challenging Britain, raising tensions before WWII.
This is where that Sonderweg debate comes in, right? Germany's special path to disaster.
Exactly. Was it the late unification, the powerful Junkers, weak liberalism, or, as newer research suggests, the role of big industry, too? It ended with WWII defeat, revolution, the Kaiser gone.
Leading to the Weimar Republic, 1918-1933. First real democracy.
Progressive constitution, but faced nightmare challenges. Hyperinflation 23, the Great Depression from 29.
Made worse by reparations, austerity.
Crippling. Fueled extremism, communists on the left, Nazis on the right. Parliament became gridlocked.
Paving the way for Hitler. Appointed Chancellor Jan 33, Then rapid consolidation of power.
Gleichschaltung, bringing everything under Nazi control. The Enabling Act in March 33 was key, gave him dictatorial powers, democracy dismantled.
The SA stormtroopers were important in the rise, too. Intimidation, violence.
Crucial in the years just before 33. Then the regime's aggression led straight to WWII and the Holocaust.
The systematic murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others. 1941-45.
A planned genocide. After WWII, total defeat, occupation by the Allies, then division.
West Germany, FRG, US, UK, French zones, East Germany, GDR, Soviet zone, Cold War frontline.
FRG became a stable, liberal democracy, federal system, learning from the past. GDR, a socialist dictatorship under the SED party.
Berlin Wall in 61, the symbol of division.
Until the peaceful revolutions of 89. Fall of the Wall, November 9th.
Then reunification in 1990. 2+4 treaty settles the external side. GDR absorbed into the FRG.
October 3rd, 1990. Under the FRG's basic law, Berlin the capital again, Helmut Kohl oversaw it all.
An incredible political roller coaster, and the economy went through just as many upheavals.
Definitely connected. Medieval times, mostly farming, manorial system. But cities and trade were vital, the Hanseatic League again.
And some early industry.
Metallurgy.
Proto-industrial stuff, yeah, using those mineral resources. Then the early modern era sees feudalism slowly erode, rise of the urban middle class, the bourgeoisie. Trade and manufacturing wealth starting to rival landed wealth by the 18th century. Guild power declining.
Right. And that point about the broader colonial economy, slave trade links, included feeding capital into Central Europe before its own industrial boom.
Industrialization hit late, but fast. State-supported, Ruhr Valley focused.
Later than Britain, yeah, but incredibly rapid. Heavy industry, chemicals, electrical, close links between banks and industry, cartels common. Europe's leader by 1900, massive city growth.
But the 20th century brought economic disasters, too. Hyperinflation.
Wiped out savings in 23. Then the Great Depression hit Weimar incredibly hard. Nazi command economy for war. WWII devastation.
Then the post-war miracles. Or miracle singular.
Well, West Germany's Wirtschaftswunder was remarkable. Marshall Plan aid helped, but also the focus on the Soziale Marktwirtschaft, social market economy.
Balancing free markets and a strong safety net, plus high-quality exports.
Exactly. East Germany's planned economy just couldn't keep up.
Post-reunification, integrating the East remains a huge task, doesn't it?
An ongoing challenge. Schroeder's Agenda 2010 reforms tried to tackle competitiveness, tax cuts, labor market changes, the Hartz concept.
And today,
Yeah.
still a powerhouse. Fourth largest economy, export-focused.
Very much so. Strong manufacturing, focus on Industry 4.0, but challenges remain.
Export dependency, energy imports now, critical post-nuclear and Russian gas shifts, digitization needed, skilled labor shortages.
And those East-West economic gaps persist.
All those economic changes must have dramatically reshaped society, too. Social structures, demographics.
Absolutely. Traditionally very hierarchical, right? Landed nobles, Junkers, urban bourgeoisie, rural peasants. Industrialization creates this huge urban working class.
Which organizes quickly. Unions, the SPD party.
Powerful forces. Class distinctions remain significant for a long time, and the rise of the grand bourgeoisie, the big industrialists and bankers in the 19th century, shook up the elite structure.
And the early modern period already saw shifts away from pure feudalism. Cities, merchants gaining ground.
Yeah, especially in places like Prussia from the mid-17th century. Peasants saw changes too. Serfdom gradually abolished. Agrarian reforms in some areas creating wealthier farmers.
Demographics. 19th century, high birth rates, but also lots of emigration.
Through the Americas, Russia, elsewhere. Driven by economics, sometimes politics. Then the world wars, huge population losses.
Post-WWII, West Germany takes in millions of ethnic German refugees, the Vertrieben.
Over 12 million, a massive integration challenge. Then the Gastarbeiter program in the 60s due to labor shortages.
Bringing workers from Turkey, Italy, Yugoslavia, fundamentally changing the country.
Turned Germany into a country of immigration, even if that wasn't the initial plan. Reunification, EU expansion continued that.
And now, aging population, low birth rate, reliant on immigration for the workforce.
That's the picture. Urbanization exploding in the 19th century. Slowed, then post-war rebuilding. GDR had its planned industrial cities too.
What about gender relations? Traditional Kinder, Kirche, Kirche.
That was the ideal for a long time. Weimar brought big changes, suffrage, legal equality, the new woman idea. Nazis reversed it brutally.
Post-WWII, feminist movements push for change again.
Major gains achieved, though issues remain. The women's movement was crucial.
And ethnic relations today, shaped by immigration Integration debates.
Very complex. Integration is a key challenge. Rise of populism, like the AfD, especially in the East, is partly tied to this. Debates on multiculturalism continue.
And immigrant communities, like Turkish Germans, are becoming more politically active.
Increasingly so, yeah. Influencing domestic debates, sometimes foreign policy, too.
Shifting gears again. Culture, intellect, religion. Germany's impact here is massive.
Commence. Religiously, it starts with Germanic paganism, nature-based beliefs, then Christianization, slow, often top-down.
Clovis converting. Missionaries like St. Boniface. Catholicism becomes dominant. Church tied into the HRE structure.
Deeply. Clergy held secular power, prince-bishoprics, but that control over appointments caused conflict.
The investiture controversy again, emperor versus pope. Weaken the emperor.
Right. And this context is vital for understanding the Reformation. Luther in 1517 challenging the church. Printing press spreads ideas like wildfire.
His Bible translation huge for standardizing the German language, right? Not just religious impact.
Monumental, culturally and linguistically. Led to the Lutheran Church splitting off, religious wars, the Peasant Wars got tied into it, ultimately the 30 Years' War.
Later on, Counter-Reformation, Pietism.
Pietism was a Lutheran revival, more personal piety. Then the Enlightenment, aufklärung, and secularization gradually reduced the church's direct power.
Bismarck's culture camp against the Catholic Church in the 1870s.
A major clash. Nazi era tried to control churches, faced resistance from the confessing church. Post-WWII, revival then, more secularization, especially in the East.
Today, roughly balanced Catholic Protestant West, growing Muslim population, many unaffiliated.
That's about right. Intellectually, philosophy, just a powerhouse. Kant, Hegel, Marx, Nietzsche.
Frankfurt School, phenomenology. The list is endless. And science, too. Leibniz, Humboldt, Einstein, Planck, Heisenberg.
Truly foundational figures. Education evolved, too. Medieval church schools. First universities in the 14th century.
Reformation boosted literacy. Prussia pushes compulsory state education. Humboldt's university model.
Hugely influential, Bildung, ideal, research focus. Spread globally. Post-WWII, tract system in the West, comprehensive in the East. Ongoing debates about reform.
Arts and literature. Where to even begin? Medieval epics, Luther's Bible, Goethe, Schiller, the Romantics.
Grimm brothers, fairy tales. Then 19th century realism. 20th century, Mann, Hesse, Brecht, grappling with the past.
Music. Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, Wagner. The canon basically rests here.
Mozart, Haydn, Schumann, Mahler, incredible depth across centuries.
Visual arts, too. Dürer, Holbein, Caspar, David Friedrich, Expressionism, Bauhaus.
Bauhaus revolutionized design. Post-war figures like Bose, Richter, and architecture tells a story visually.
Roman ruins, Gothic cathedrals, timbered houses, Baroque palaces, neoclassicism, Bauhaus modernism, Nazi monumentalism, post-war rebuilding.
A visual timeline. And language itself, evolving from Proto-Germanic, standardized largely by Luther's Bible. Dialects persist, but Standard German dominates.
All this culture exists alongside a pretty intense military history.
Often intertwined, unfortunately. Key conflicts we've mentioned. 30 Years' War, Napoleonic, Franco-Prussian, World Wars, Cold War. They defined eras.
And strategies evolved. Feudal armies to Prussian discipline and mobility.
Frederick the Great's focus on the decisive battle. 30 Years' War saw innovations too. WWI had the Schlieffen Plan. WWII the Blitzkrieg.
U-boats, jets, V-2s later in WWII. Then NATO versus Warsaw Pact doctrines.
Prussian military strength was central to its rise, and Bismarck used that power directly for unification.
The German Empire then built up its military massively, army and navy.
Huge buildup. Tirpitz's naval program aimed directly at Britain, escalating the arms race. Some elites saw war as inevitable, even necessary.
July Crisis 1914, the Blankos check to Austria-Hungary. Critical step towards WWI. Fear of encirclement.
Key factors. The idea of localizing the conflict seems like a facade in hindsight. Managing the war economy was also a challenge for the empire.
Nazi regime. Pure aggression, expansionism, blitzkrieg, WWII.
Which led to that profound post-WWII shift, a deep commitment to pacifism, multilateralism.
Bundeswehr, under civilian control, integrated into NATO. GDR and the Warsaw Pact.
West Germany was the Cold War frontline. Post-reunification, the Bundeswehr became professional, focused on international crisis management, NATO, UN, EU missions.
But often reluctantly. That culture of restraint.
Very much shaped by WWII. Pacifism runs deep. National understanding of war's cost is high. Legacy of anti-Nazi resistance feeds into this too.
Contemporary threats. Cyber, terror, hybrid warfare. supporting Ukraine now.
Yeah, the security landscape keeps changing. This history directly shapes Germany's place in the world today.
International relations. France is key. From rivalry to partnership driving the EU.
The cornerstone relationship now, Poland. Difficult past, now an important partner after reconciliation.
Austria. Shared culture, past rivalry, Prussia versus Austria. Anschluss, now close EU partners.
Right, UK, sometimes allies, sometimes rivals, naval race, NATO partners, Brexit changed things.
U.S. enemies in the world wars, then vital for FRG recovery and security via NATO. Close, sometimes tricky, transatlantic ties.
Russia-Soviet Union, incredibly complex. Cooperation, extreme conflict, WWII, Eastern Front, Cold War standoff, post-Cold War partnership now broken over Ukraine. Energy dependence was a factor.
Israel. Unique relationships shaped by the Holocaust, strong support, reparations.
Deep historical responsibility felt there. China. Huge economic partner, but also a systemic rival with different values.
In Germany's role in institutions, founding member of EU precursors, UN, NATO.
Deeply embedded in multilateral structures, G7, G20, OECD, etc., has pushed for a permanent UN Security Council seat sometimes.
So its global role is major economic power, key EU player, advocate for multilateralism, human rights.
Increasing security role, often cautiously. Major aid donor.
What about the diaspora? Germans who emigrated.
Huge emigration, historically retained culture, but limited policy influence back home. Ethnic Germans returning from Eastern Europe, Aussiedler, had more domestic impact. And now, immigrant communities like Turkish Germans influence debates.
Okay, bringing it all together.
Yeah.
Modern challenges and developments. What stands out?
Well, post-WWII West Germany built this model. Democracy, European integration, social market economy, and that difficult process of facing the Nazi past, Vergangenheitsbewältigung.
Reunification in '90. Huge success, but left lasting challenges. Inner reunification.
These social, economic, psychological gaps between East and West are still felt, still being worked through.
Contemporary issues. Identity debates with immigration, rise of populism, AfD.
Especially in the East, yeah.
Right.
Navigated through coalition politics, EU cooperation.
Social challenges.
Yeah.
Integration. Aging population, straining welfare. East-West disparities, inequality. Digital divide.
A whole raft of interconnected issues. Economically. Export dependence, energy transition hurdles, digitization needs, labor shortages.
Environmentally, pioneering green movement, ambitious climate goals, energy end, but practical challenges remain.
Great expansion, costs, balancing industry needs. It's tough. Germany's path today is really defined by leveraging strengths within that EU multilateral framework, mindful of history's dangers, while tackling these 21st century problems.
Future depends on managing integration, green digital transitions, EU role, upholding democracy.
All shaped by the lessons of the past. Which brings us to how that past is even studied and understood. Historiography.
How interpretations change over time, right? Nationalist views, post-WWI war guilt debates.
Nazi-era politicized history completely. Post-WWII, critical engagement with Nazism, the Holocaust became central. Vergangenheitsbewältigung is also about historical understanding.
Key debates still ongoing. This underway Germany's supposed special path.
Still debated. Was it unique factors leading to Nazism or comparable to elsewhere? The role of Junkers versus industrialists in the empire ties into this.
Causes of WWI Fischer controversy about German aims. Nature of the Nazi regime totalitarianism. Intentionalist versus functionalist views on the Holocaust.
Was it planned from the start or did it evolve? Relationship between Nazis and society, consent, coercion? Huge questions.
The Holocaust itself, uniqueness, causes, memory. The historic or strike debate.
Focused on that uniqueness question in the 80s. GDR history, too. Totalitarian state versus normal life. How does it compare to Nazism?
Even unification in 1871, revolution from above or more complex, consequences of Prussian dominance, and reunification 90, annexation versus consent. East German perspectives.
All active areas of study and debate. German colonialism is getting more focused now to its legacy, links to later events like the Holocaust, which is highly contested.
And that big theme, continuity versus discontinuity, Empire to Third Reich. 1945 as a total break, Stunde Null or not.
Constant questions. The sources we've drawn on reflect this complex historiography, archaeology, Roman texts, medieval documents, scholarly books, news reports. Assessing them is key.
So, quite a journey. Millennia condensed. Geography, fragmentation, unity, conflict, economic shifts, cultural highs, social changes.
It's a really layered, complex story. Not simple at all. But the past is definitely talking to the present here.
You can see how history shapes Germany's structure, economy, memory culture, its role in the world today.
Profoundly, it's inescapable.